opportunity for us to share with you intuitively, in the moment, lots of great wisdom, some insights, and some great brainstorming. And then I have some guests with us as well today who might be offering some stimulating questions and various things that can be included in this discussion for us to really all together look at this time of creating what I call community thinking. Now, community thinking is this capacity to think more globally. So we have a growth mindset, each of us, that we can learn to evolve, and we can learn to grow, and we can learn to learn from challenging situations. This is what qualifies us into what's called the growth mindset. And this is based in some real science by Carol Dweck, a scientist who studied the way that we meet challenges in life, the way that we face problems. When we look at a problem with the mindset of learning and growing, we tend to produce much better results. When we look at a problem and we get stuck in the problem as something that can't be solved, or something that can't work, or something that's really affecting us negatively, and we arrange our thinking around that, we tend to perform less well. So let's all keep this in mind as we move through this very important time, as many are in quarantine, lockdown around the world, really for the protection of the rest of us, the greater good. We're in it for good reason. So this goes to say then that if we are practicing this growth mindset, looking at the challenge as an opportunity to learn and grow, we are having a very beautiful opportunity really to look in places that we would normally not look, to slow down in places where we would normally be speeding up so fast on the rat race that we would definitely not look. And we are facing a time where we need to tap into this potential of the human race, the possibility of being with great creative scientific discoveries that can help stabilize the virus, that can help prevent more loss of lives. So tapping into that potential with our minds, our thoughts, our feelings, our actions is very much more useful at this time than spiraling into fear and resistance. And this is what we're teaching you in Paradigm Shifter. We are here to shift the paradigm. As we are now live on YouTube, I want to introduce my beautiful guest, Irene Compte Lobera. It's an honor to have you here with me today. Irene is a Transformer CLO, Chief Learning Officer, and her passion is to help leaders and teams in organizations navigate with confidence in necessary transformation stages. Little did she know, and many of us, that we would be used at this time by the natural forces to provide some really important change management insight. She is also a woman founder for prosavendola.com, which she presented in Egypt at the annual Women's Economic Forum. And she is contributing internationally in this domain. And she says in her bio, which I really love, in today's dynamic environment, leadership is facing important challenges. How poignant are these words? Since known paradigms may no longer be valid to thrive in a VUCA context, VUCA context, workplace learning has become a key lever for success. And so organizations are called to deeply transform their capabilities and to make learning and innovation an integral part of their strategic agenda. Talk about challenges. Irene, Transformer CLO and conscious leadership expert, helping organizations to reshape their capabilities and culture. Welcome to this live series of Paradigm Shifter. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you, Heleniq. Thank you first for the invitation, and thank you for the kind presentation. I'm very honored to be part of this program. As a start, I would like to share that I'm speaking from Barcelona in Spain, where you all know that we are facing a heavy confinement. But what I pretend to share with you is that it's not all negative what we are living these days. And we have been discussing a lot about how to stay positive in this context. And my wish today is to focus a little bit on one of the aspects that we are all facing these days when working remotely, and focus even more specifically on what can be leadership in these days, and maybe to tackle some strategies, okay? So my proposal is that maybe I introduce a little bit some of the issues that I think are important to take into account in this setting that we are all facing. But I am open for discussion with all of you present through questions anytime. So Heleniq, also feel free to cut me if you feel that we need to go deeper into some issues, okay? I have prepared just a few slides in order to put some structure in my ideas. Okay, so I'm just going to share that with you. So as Heleniq introduced, I would like to share these communication ideas for these times. And actually, let me just, okay, too many things open. So just 1 second. We don't want to go too fast. There.
Just
now you can see it? Yeah, can you see it, Heleniq, and everyone?
See it really well, and those who are following the live stream on Facebook won't be able to see it, but we will be able to offer a recording of this session. So just so you know, Irene is actually going to be now sharing a presentation on communication strategies that people can be considering in times of remote working. Many of you know that businesses have shut down and moved their workforce home, back to the home space. So today's session was inspired by that, asking Irene what we can do to help people be more effective at how they manage the leadership of that change. So for those not watching the PowerPoint, I will be giving a few highlights here and there, just commenting on a few aspects as you go along. That's okay with you, Irene?
Yes, because no worries really, because the slides are just a little bit of visual support of what I will be explaining thoroughly anyway, okay?
Right. Okay.
So the first idea I want to share, which I think is really, really important now, is to remind ourselves that communication is and exists before and beyond words. And I would even add, communication is before and beyond technologies, okay? This is a time where we rely a lot on ICT, information and communication technologies, to stay close and connected to the people in our teams. And nevertheless, I think it's very important to remember that communication goes beyond words and beyond technology. Why is this important to remember? Because no matter if we communicate personally or at distance, remotely, one of the central essential things in communication is the energy that we put in it, okay? And for me, that's very, very important to remember. And I will go deeper into this, but I would like you to keep this idea in mind. When we express ourselves, we are emitting not only words, but also a certain type of energy and vibration, okay? And this, you will see, deals with the idea of, are we staying negative? Are we staying positive? Are we expressing fear with our words and with our energy? Or are we expressing confidence and positivity with our energy and with our words, okay? First idea. Let me go to the next one, which builds on this, and sorry. Okay, having said that, I will go again in this idea that beyond information and communication technologies that we are all of us using now, Zoom, Hangouts, all the platforms that you know, telephone, messages, it's also very important for me to remember that always in remote or presential settings, we, the people, the person behind, we are the most important communication instrument, okay? We tend to put too much trust in tools. And what I'm inviting you to consider is that if we are the most important instrument for communication, it's a time to be aware of how we are feeling. What is this energy that we are putting in this communication, Okay, it's not the instrument, it's always our mind and our heart that's leading that communication. And that's where I want to go next. Therefore, before speaking about, let's take a quick look at our mind. And I will use here the word mindfulness. I'm sure you are familiar with that concept. I have a sentence there in Spanish, práctica de la atención plena, just to remind us what it really means. Mindfulness is the quality or state of being conscious and aware. And that's a very important issue in these times, where there's a lot of threats, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of suffering. We will speak a little bit about that. In your teams, maybe in yourself, in your families, companies, there's a lot going on, and we need to have our minds being conscious about that and staying aware, okay? But the mind alone will not go too far. So I also want to speak about the heart. It's another super important component in these times of remote communication. And I have used the word compassion here expressly. It comes from the Latin word compatio, insieme, soffro, that's Italian. It basically means, as you see here, some of you see, compassion means participating in the suffering of the others. Now, let me stop here for a minute. Why am I talking about suffering and compassion as a tool for good communication in these times? Because not only in Spain, Italy, China, the States, everywhere in the world, there is now a situation where a lot of people are suffering. They're suffering loss and many other things that we have mentioned. And we need, as leaders of teams, we need to take that into account. Any opportunity we have to communicate with our people, it doesn't matter if we are a small team of 3 or a big team of 3,000. We need to bring compassion in our communication. Mindfulness, okay, having your mind aware of what's going on, but also we need to bring the heart in the equation, okay? There's a long definition of what compassion means here. I'm not going to go into that. I would like you to just remind that compassion is this capacity to connect to the other person through their suffering, okay? Let me go to the next idea to keep building on these basics for communication. Now, we are actually building this idea of the mind, the heart, both elements working together, because we are, all of us in professional and personal settings, we are all communicating to connect. And that's what we are speaking about today. How can we still connect in good ways with our teams that are working remotely? Let me bring back this idea of awareness, of being aware of the way we communicate, because it doesn't matter if it's presential or remote, the quality of how we communicate will determine the quality of our relationships, okay? Having said that, this quality of communication actually starts first with ourselves as leaders. That's also something I've learned over the years. I will go later on how to communicate with your team. But first, if you are a leader, you need to really take care of yourself in these times of difficulties. You will not be able to stay positive for others if you are not first stopping and really using this time to communicate with yourself. I think it's very, very relevant to use this time for that. Heleniq, sorry, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to come in and say that this was a very important aspect that we started looking at for caregivers. And really, people who are on the front lines right now, they are in a way leading the whole health care for those who are critically ill, and of course feeling very overwhelmed, and often, I guess, on the mass scale, criticized for the fact that in some countries they're not handling anyone who's sick. There hasn't been testing for everybody. There's so many different things that are being raised as concerns, and sometimes even strong critique towards the leaders, whether they're in healthcare or not. So leaders themselves of companies even now are probably facing a lot of, I would like to say, unconscious attacks from their employees or people that are themselves losing their stability because they don't know about their job security, or they don't feel well equipped to work remotely. So if you are a leader out there and you are feeling criticized or misunderstood, or you're feeling somehow helpless with where you are, know that that's totally normal. And I love what you're saying, Irina, is to take it really seriously, that you need some care, because you are going to be almost a target or a focal point for a lot of people that are losing their stability at the moment. And psychologically, we say that, sometimes when you're a leader of a team, you become like the father or the mother of the group. And so you get what we call projections from the group, right? So the group starts treating you a little bit like someone that's supposed to take care of them or parent them, or, why aren't you doing this properly? Or why don't you love me enough? And we have lots of great teachers who say there never is enough love for the mother, So your mother can never love you enough. Your boss can never do everything right, even if he really is highly skilled or she's really highly skilled. So if you are a leader, know that this is a time where your team members are going to be projecting stuff onto you.
Yes.
And to manage it, it's so important to start looking at these tips you're giving, Irina, is how to be compassionate to yourself first, to really be understanding this is, you're not supposed to know how to do everything right now. This is a time of learning for all of us. And the self-care is such an important place to start. Thank you. Yeah, carry on.
Yes, actually, for those of you that are not seeing the presentation, the sentence I have written here says like this: stopping and communicating with yourself is a revolutionary act. And in here, picking up from the words that Heleniq just shared, we could substitute the word communicating for self-care. Huh? Stopping and taking self-care is a revolutionary act in this difficult times. So it's very, very important to think about, as a leader, can I have some moments for this mindfulness? Can I have some moments for this self-care? Can I have these moments for compassion first with myself, accepting that I am not a superhero that will solve all the problems of my company alone or quickly. So all of this is prior to any, let's say, communication specific strategy that I can share with you. All of this previous is important, and that's why I thought it was important to put it in front. So having seen these 3-4 issues that are necessary and essential for communicating with yourself as a leader, let me quickly go into the idea of what can we do once we as leaders have more serenity, are taking good care of ourselves, are keeping our strength there, and so on. What can we do? Some strategies, ideas, when we need to communicate with our teams remotely, okay? And I'm sharing here a slide that has a central point, which says, please, no discordances, meaning make sure your energy matches your words. Let me use an example. Imagine that you have what it's called an all hands meeting with all the team. It's this kind of meeting at the first thing in the morning when you gather everyone for a remote meeting, and maybe to discuss what is the highlights of the week and what are the objectives and what you need to accomplish as a team. Okay, if you as a leader enter that meeting in the morning with the, let me use the word, wrong energy, imagine that you need to pull up motivation on your team, but you arrive to that meeting feeling completely miserable, full of fear, anxiety, or whatever energy, which that would be fine. I mean, I'm not questioning that you may feel that, okay? Because we are all humans, even leaders are humans, believe it or not. What I'm saying is, if you feel, you are aware that you are entering that meeting in the morning with the team with all those energies, you need to take care of that before doing that meeting, because no matter what words you use in that meeting with your team, if you are full of fear inside, it's very, very difficult that you will transmit motivation and positivity to your team, okay? Communication is beyond words. Energy travels miles and miles and miles, okay? So we need to take care if there is some discordance. Again, that's the central point. Having said that, I have just focused on 4 ideas. There would be many more, okay? But let me name them. First, building on what I was just saying, you need, as a leader, you need to nurture your own strength first, okay? Second idea, so take care of yourself. We've spoken of that. Second idea, when you communicate with anyone in your team, be it 1 person or 10, please stay open and honest. Heleniq was speaking in the presentation about how can we look at problems with a growth mindset, and how can we look at problems like opportunities. And that's important for the second idea I'm sharing. We can be open and honest, sharing the difficult times that we are living, especially in companies, okay? We can all accept that. You can accept and believe that your team is composed of grown-up adults who can take bad news and not fall into despair, okay? Do not treat your team as if they were desperate children. And I'm only saying that because sometimes I see that in leaders. Some leaders think that part of their teams will not be able to take bad news. And I don't think that's the right approach, okay? So be honest and open. Embrace vulnerability in yourself and in others, okay? Vulnerability is now on the table of everyone. We are all feeling this uncertainty. No one has the right answer, but we can be open and honest about it, okay? Third idea I would like to share as a general strategy. As a leader, this is the time to hone, to practice your listening skills. And I'm going to jump into empathy here, okay? We've talked about compassion, which is very much linked to empathy. And empathy starts with keeping silent, okay? As a leader, because we have said this is time for suffering, uncertainty, etc., you need to really start listening. If you are able as a leader to really listen to what the people in your team are living, working from home, the kids, maybe they've lost someone in the family. If you are able to just listen, half of the work is done. Okay. And then you can speak about objective productivity. How are we going to do to keep the company? Okay. But empathy starts with listening. So that's a strategy I wanted to share as well. And the fourth idea is, I think that's also interesting in this time, is to foster co-creation. I will hook here to the idea that Heleniq was mentioning. Leader is not expected to have all the solutions, especially in this time of absolute uncertainty. Foster co-creation, the power of what Heleniq mentioned as the community thinking. And I also call sometimes collective intelligence.
Beautiful, I love that. Collective intelligence. That's the word we'll use now. This is a collective intelligent race. Look at us working together. Yeah.
Necessity sparks creativity. Your team can be your best innovation colleagues at this time. There are problems with your company for sure. Foster co-creation of solutions by collective intelligence. So Heleniq, I will stop here. I think these four or five insights kind of summarize some of the pillars of what I think has to be the communication in these times. So if you are okay with it, I would stop it here. And open it up for your discussions, which I will be really interested to hear about.
Beautiful. I want to echo in what you've said here, really coming through many different discussions with different leaders. We had a great conversation on Wednesday about EQ in the academic institutions, and then EQ in institutions and how this approach is developing at the moment, but also helping to accelerate a deeper level of compassionate collective intelligence that you've just given a great name for, right? So you said some very important steps here that I think I want to repeat back to everybody listening. Number one was to be transparent. Don't treat members as desperate children. This is a very great piece of advice from an expert herself, Irene, saying that she sees a lot of the times leaders not being transparent enough for concern that the others will not manage. But perhaps it's time, and maybe you're being forced at this time even, to really disclose more transparently, more powerfully, and then in so doing, you're doing step number two, which is to accept the vulnerability, because I think people are going through times of shock and denial long enough now because they are struggling to accept the situation. And that's really what's motivated and inspired us to do all this work for all of you now, is to bring people that are trained in EQ, people that are trained in communication and management of teams, people that have done this work of change management, and people who've worked in trauma and crisis, to help you understand that vulnerability is a very important human condition that we all have to learn as a species now to manage better than we have. We've been suppressing emotion, we've been denying emotion, we've been bad shaming emotion in our societies. And I speak a lot about this in conferences, about how it's causing a lot of problems for our youth, for our planet, for ourselves. As a clinical psychologist, it's very easy to say this after 23 years of practice. A lot of people suffer because they feel they cannot show or share or make peace with their vulnerability. And it is a fundamental part of the human experience. So we are being asked as a race right now, as an entire collective intelligence, as a unified body, to learn to work in vulnerable situations with a kind of respect. So I really want to make this a highlighted point. How do we accept the vulnerability of our own condition, of our planet, of each other? We are doing a great job. Many people have put this on the agenda. Governments are taking it seriously. People are staying at home. Yes, there's people that are slipping through the cracks, and there's things that aren't perfect, and we also don't know. And we're facing a lot of the fear of that. But really, let's look at the beauty in every situation. It is an art to learn to do this. And being vulnerable presents us with a very, very powerful teaching. I think the teaching is, there are many, but I think one of them worth noticing is that being vulnerable makes you humble down and drop your ego. And the minute you do that, you start becoming receptive to people's wisdom, to other people's encouragement. You start looking at where you can help others. You start serving communities. You start realizing that you're not Superman, Superwoman, and you've actually got a lot of things you still have to learn. You start actually inventing, creating, discovering, investigating in places where you never would. Vulnerability is key. And anyone who develops true strength, it has been born from tapping into their vulnerability. So I want to encourage you, if you're a leader, put this message to your people. Let them know it's okay that they are shaking, that they are wobbling, that things are not clear, that things are uncertain, and that there is a strength that will emerge from this. Number 3 is listening, which Irene, you say is a strategy itself for communication. And it starts with this capacity to hear the voices of your people, to listen to what their needs are. It's part of EQ as well. And it's also compassionate listening, compassionate communication is a style of mediation negotiation nowadays. It's not debatable anymore that we need emotion in order to understand each other. And that emotional receptivity comes from listening. But you have to, again, drop away from what your ego tells you, that I think I know the answer, or I know what this person wants, or I know what's good for them. In fact, you need to be listening to what's good for them, right? So you mentioned that as number 3, Irina, and then you say number 4, foster co-creation in this time and develop collective intelligence. We have been doing this on summits with global female leaders, talking about one of the subjects we listed as unity. This collective experience right now is mobilizing things in us as a human race that simply we could not do before, because we were just not pushed enough. We were so busy, weren't we? We had agendas, we had schedules, we were out there in the world doing a million things, and now we realize we actually still survive, we're still okay doing half of it, doing a third of it. In fact, we are harvesting our energies now. And part of this harvesting is like the hive, what we all belong to, all the worker bees. We are all looking at where is the honey. And I think right now we have to look at this whole hive and review it and really look at how are we going to produce honey in this time? How are we going to produce honey in the next few months? And we can only do it together. So we spoke a lot on those lives about what I call the shadow side of any situation. There's a polarity, like I said at the beginning, with all of you as well. Listening on previous lives, you've given lots of feedback about how this has really helped. So we say it again quickly here. There's a shadow side to our co-creation. It means that we co-create together. All the terrible things in this world do not belong just to others. They belong to all of us, because we all collectively, unconsciously unite. When we sleep, we tap into the collective field. When we share ideas and when scientists discover things, there are very powerful scientific theories, morphogenetic fields, many of them, I won't talk about them all now, that explain evolution is a process that happens because we are all connected. So if we were not connected, we couldn't evolve as a species. And the fact that we are struggling to understand that there is a dark side to that and a light side to that. Although dark, light, shadow, light, the shadow side is we infect each other. Here it is. Very, very obvious, unable to deny. We affect each other. We at the moment can infect each other. That's why we're all staying at home. The positive side of that unity is that we are able to co-create. And in that co-creation, we're developing this collective intelligence. Tell me, how do you see people doing that, Irina? How are people co-creating right now in ways that maybe you haven't seen before? Can you give us some?
Well, using real-time examples here in Spain, we, as you probably have seen in the news, there was a serious shortage of equipment, medical equipment for the front line, really to save lives. So for example, the community of makers, what we call them makers, people that normally have at least one 3D printer at home, they have organized themselves already for 2 weeks, and they have started all together to print small pieces that can help to double the number of, I don't know what's it called in English, but respirators. So for people that enter into severe pneumonia and could probably die because they don't have the machine to help them breathe, the maker community got all together and co-created all the necessary steps and pieces and engineering and logistics to solve that. There's a lot of co-creation going on in the education world. All of these kids that are now staying home, it's incredible, the amount of initiatives. There's a lot of co-creation in softer things like taking care of each other, entertainment, you know. So co-creation is everywhere now, and we are being amazed by it. every day in
Yeah,
in any sector, really.
exactly. And I think at this time we have a opportunity to discover how to do that even on a new platform. Many businesses have started saying that they have not managed to put their businesses online, and they haven't managed that hurdle or that challenge of the remote working, how to save kind of burnout statistics right now, which are rising, certainly in the Netherlands,
Yeah.
because people have to commute. There's too much pollution. So there's a lot of these kind of rippling effect challenges that we face daily that we just don't have solutions for. And it seems that this situation has forced people to get their companies working remotely and to actually work it all out. All the logistics have to be worked out for business to continue. And it was just taking so long before. And now there's a lot of help because everybody's on that same track, thinking on the same wavelength that they have to do this. So there's been lots of help mobilized on how to work on Zoom, free trainings from different entrepreneurs. Zoom is offered special offerings. And in fact, I even put together on my Heleniq A business page a whole dedication to this called Paradigm Shifter, because I really believe this is where the paradigm is shifting. And not just to online communication, because some of us have worked online for years and we know there's great shadow sides to that. So that let's not glamorize it all the way out of meeting in person. But certainly as a platform, international networking has never been what it is now because of the internet. So we also now are asked to be more responsible and more accountable to how do we do that in a healthy way? How do we make sure that, you know, we can solve some problems with the internet? And there's questions that are starting to get answered right now, like burnout prevention. People commute less. They have one day where they remote work at home. Maybe they have two. They have a child in the family. Maybe they have 2 days where they're remote working for a period of time. So we're starting to look at new ways. I call that ingenuity. So we had a summit on that as well. Original thinking, ingenious type thinking that's been generated out of the need to look at things in new and interesting ways. So I totally agree. There's also been a great lady that came on one of my lives, Maria Santiago in America, who's quite an expert on bipolar diagnosis in education in young girls, and a very interesting niche. But she just also pulled together a project to get people to sew masks worldwide, up to 1,000, to try and meet the big need that people are calling out for right now. And it's been so inspiring to see these kinds of collective actions happening, because as we know now, we use the internet, we connect with an entire planet. And if you know a few extra little bits and pieces, you can get it to be very efficient, and you can mobilize a community, a world community, to support something. So that's so wonderful to see. I wanted to ask you one extra thing, Irene, if I can.
Sure. Yes.
If we look now at this great action you suggested, which is the morning check-in, right? I heard this also from Samia Kamar. She's an HR resource manager. I think we met in Egypt there as well, and you've seen her on some lives. She also mentioned something really cool. I want to say it's cool because I think it's cool. Thursdays, they have a happy hour, because they started to see that really they're encouraging people to work online with all that's going on. And you gave such great attention to that there's communities out there that are losing people. There are individuals in your team that might be sick themselves. There are many things going on that people have to handle. And meeting each encounter with some compassionate leadership, transparency is very important. And this daily check-in was something that they're actually doing in their companies too already. And she's sort of helping manage it, right? And something I was thinking about is just giving people a little structure for that. So you said it in your talk, but maybe we can highlight it. You said something like, first, it's important to be transparent there, to actually meet the people with heart and compassion, and then to get on to business. Is that right?
Yeah, that would be for me a good proposal, but there's also the option that you can separate these communication moments. I mean, it depends on the context. Imagine if you are a small company, an SME, and you have 10 people, this daily meeting can be contained in 1 hour of, let's say, remote communication, everyone connected at the same time. And in that 1 hour, you can devote the first 20 minutes to make a 2 minutes roundtable where everybody updates on the personal issues, just for the sake of sharing, because it's important. And then the rest of the meeting can be to business. Now, if you are in a larger company where you have maybe, I don't know, 180 people that are going to connect at that same time, maybe that's not the right moment or the right space to go into personal issues. But then that's still important in this moment of time that we are sharing as humanity. It is important that at least once a week you devote specific time for that. Now, how, as a leader, how can you handle personal communication time with 180 people? Well, then maybe you can nominate some ambassadors, you know, and that's this smart, compassionate leadership. We all have in our teams people that are naturally more empathic or more trained to help others to express their emotions. Well, call them, build a special force for that.
Yeah.
Call people in your team that can be ambassadors for sharing moments, and then you can organize different meetings. And it's really, it may seem a silly thing to do, but it's not. It's very, very important in this time, because again, as we are sharing, a lot of people are suffering, even just suffering uncertainty, but that's suffering already. And to create that space remotely to share that, it's very important to keep people connected as a team.
Beautiful. And maybe I can add in a distinction here from very specific clinical psychology work, is that the distinction we need to all understand when it comes to emotions is that what I think we've been doing as a society is putting emotions off the professional table. And we've been sliding them all the way to the end of the table and then hope they sort of fall off, drop off, and land on the floor somewhere. But really, what we need to be doing is putting emotions on the table and find a way, a time, and a method to manage and handle them. Because I tell you what happens, what has been happening, is people have been pushing the emotions out of the picture so much that they've assumed that they go away. And what actually happens is they get suppressed, and then they arise. And I think this is why we're talking about FQ, which is a new way of talking about EQ. It's the feminine capital, like my friend Viola calls it. It's the feminine quotient that I like to call it. It's the emotional intelligence together with the feminized politics that we all are trying to develop in the world in order to restore balance here, that we need to understand is a very important component of how we do work from now on. Because if we keep sliding the emotion off the table, it's going to find another way to pop up. And it often pops up in very inconvenient places. It comes in fights back home with your spouse. It comes in how you parent your children pretty aggressively. And again, I'm vouching for this. It also comes in having conflict at work that is becoming increasingly unmanageable. It's having problems with other race groups. It's having issues with gender, issues with race, issues with age. It's all this emotional stuff that doesn't get processed, that at the end of the day does something that I keep talking about, leaks. It leaks out, and it finds little cracks and crevices, weak spots, blind spots, and it creeps in there. So one suggestion here, quick solution, is let's shift the word from controlling emotion or separating emotion into containing emotion. Because right now we have a perfect platform to experiment with this and to develop the intelligence of our race to do it. We need to find ways to contain the anxiety of our teams, our businesses, our families, our children, ourselves. Because when you don't contain the anxiety, as I gave that metaphor, it shifts off the table, falls on the floor, and it's splat, comes out at night when you crack over why somebody cooked you a steak instead of a piece of chicken. And it's happening. We talked a lot about it on limitlessness in terms of emotional management for chaos and crisis, right? In critical situations, there is a lot of anxiety because of the uncertainty. The mind goes into the unknown. Lots of destabilization happens in the nervous system. You're dealing with a lot of adrenaline. So you need to find ways to manage that adrenaline. And I totally want to commend you, Irina, for giving us such a heartfelt presentation and not going into strategy. Because
I think you can find that in internet easily.
Absolutely. And that's less
techniques for remote work, that's everywhere. But I thought
exactly. And I think we can't really be effective in that until we handle the emotional tone. And that's the part that people don't know how to do yet. And I think this is the distinctive word, is how do you contain your team's anxiety, uncertainty, loss, pain in that meeting so that they can return to the professional sector or the professional part of their personality. The reality is when there's too much of that emotional instability, we cannot be professional, and what we do is not productive. So let's see how we can do that. Irina is here. If anybody wants to go into a consultation with her or wants to have a discussion with her, by all means, please join us on our platforms where we get a chance to share with you the personal route to any of these people that you hear speaking on Paradigm Shifter. And if you want to network further with us, you can reach out on LinkedIn. You can come onto Facebook pages, the one you see this, you can follow the YouTube. And then you can really also look for the hyperlinks on all the posts. Hyperlink that person, find them, book a 20-minute call, book an hour session for your colleagues, and see how you can get some of this done at this time with some support. Because if you're a leader out there feeling desperate, there are people that are here to guide you, that know how to practice what's called change management. And this is nothing but a change management opportunity. I'm welcoming my new guest here, Nira Satguru, who's going to talk to us more about life-work balance. And I'm also wanting to thank you, Irina, for really thoughtful words and reminders. Your Pearls of Wisdom stay marked on the box. We have all your little steps over there. Perfect. And maybe you can just let people know. Tell people a little bit about where they can reach out to you. You're in Barcelona. Do you work remotely with other businesses around? Or
I work remotely a lot. I mean, the ICT technologies have a lot of advantages. One of them being that I can consult with clients and teams everywhere. And I also like to travel. So at some point, we will be able to travel again. But you can find me in LinkedIn easily or on my webpage. And I want to thank, let me see the name well, Hengame, Bargavi, and Carla for being here and being the audience.
So
and thank you, Heleniq, for the invitation.
Thank you so much. Before we sign off, ladies, do you have any question? Please put it on the chat or unmute yourself and give us your question now. Just before we leave, we're going to answer some of those questions. So, Carla, did you have a question you wanted to ask? Anybody have a question about the subject today?
It's not a specific question. It's just to say, Irene, I'm also based in Barcelona. So we are living the same thing.
Okay. I hope you are well.
Like that.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Anybody on Facebook want to ask a question here about managing teams? We have a nice comment from Dr. Heidi Badawi, who says, by working together and sharing knowledge, we have a better chance of beating the pandemic. And we are also greeted by many ladies that were interested to know more about the subject, but they had to go off and teach their kids.
Yeah, you see, that's what we are facing now.
Yeah, that's something we have to all deal with, contend with. So I want to thank everybody on Facebook that's been watching. I'm going to sign off this live and start a new one. Hopefully we can stream on that one. And the next subject is life-work balance and parenting children, homeschooling during this quarantine time. This seems to be a very big subject. And there's lots to say about it because it brings in much of what we've said already, new things we're thinking about, and really specifically now managing and supporting children's needs at this time. So we're going to be speaking to Neera Sadhguru. We thank Irene Compte Lobera for all her heartfelt wisdom. And as we said, you can contact her on LinkedIn. And thank you everybody watching and tuning in. You're welcome to stay, keep going. I'm going to start a new one, but I will find you back here. Okay, everybody, take care. So ladies, I'm wondering if we can try again to stream on Facebook. We couldn't the last time. That means that I might lose you and I ask you to just retap the link in a few minutes. Because Zoom is so often used these days, it's not working every time as it could and should. And that's why I'm preferring to try and make this session available to everybody, because it's, I think, very important for mothers. So is that okay for you if I sign out, you just come back in?
Sure, we'll try.
Yeah, you just click the link again, but in fact, don't do that. I'm going to try something.